Welcome to the Lancaster County Democrats Watchful Citizen Show. My name is Barbara Baier, and today's guest is Stephen McFadden, or McFadden. McFadden. I'm so sorry, Stephen. He is the author of the Call of the Land Agrarian Primer for the 21st century, and you're also the author of 10 other books, and you're a journalist.
Yes, Barb.
And so, tell us briefly about this book.
The Call of the Land.
Yeah.
Well, probably many viewers will remember that about 100 years ago, a famous American author by the name of Jack London wrote a book called The Call of the Wild. It told the story of a dog named Buck who was kidnapped from a suburban home in California and taken up to the gold rush in the Yukon. And in the last chapter of the book, the dog is standing on a knoll out in the Alaskan wilderness and feeling the tug on one side to go back to the comforts of civilization and its relationship with the human beings, and on the other side the wolves are howling, calling to Buck to come and join them in the wild, and he reaches a point where he has to make an important decision. It occurred to me as I listened to the Call of the Land and as I talked with other informed observers that the Call of the Land right now is quite urgent, and here I'm speaking about the quality of our environment and the changes taking place with our climate. And so if we listen to the Call of the Land, how might we respond? And that's why I wrote the book, to articulate what I hear as the Call of the Land, and then to survey all the wonderful, positive and intelligent responses that people in Nebraska and around the country are making in response to the Call of the Land.
So what motivated you to write this book? I mean, you start to tell us a little bit about it, but do you have like a farming background, or what attracted you to this subject?
Well, farming and gardening have been really the focus of my professional life all along since I went to journalism school, and one of my first jobs was as the farm and garden columnist for a small paper in New Hampshire, the Monadnock Ledger, and I was a passionate gardener, and I just came into friendships with a lot of the farmers, and then actually the CSA, or Community Supported Agriculture movement, started up right in my backyard, and I began reporting on that, and with a colleague wrote the first book, Farms of Tomorrow, describing CSA, and at that time it went from 2 farms in 1986 to maybe about 1,200 in 1990 when the book came out. And if you remember, Barb, this was an era when farms in Nebraska and all around the country were just, collapsing, imploding, and so many of our traditional farm families had to leave the land and go and seek employment in the cities. But while sort of the old family farms were imploding with that farm crisis, the CSA movement began to gather strength, and then in...
What is CSA? Tell us a little bit about that.
Community Supported Agriculture is a way for an unrelated family farm to come together, which is to say that people don't necessarily have to be blood relatives, but they can associate with each other out of their free will to produce crops and share them directly with the nearby households who become shareholders in the farm. We, of course, have one right here in Lincoln through the Community Crops Program, and people can buy a share of the harvest and enjoy the fruits that come directly from the farm right through the season.
So it's like a predictable source of income for producers then, because you kind of sign up early on and then you share the risk.
The farmers get their capital up front from the shareholder families, and they don't have to go to a bank and borrow money. Their capital comes directly from the people, and you get to see who's growing your food, and the people who are growing it get to see who's enjoying it and benefiting. And USDA estimates are now about 13,000 CSA farms across the United States.
A very important movement. Now, you and I were talking a little bit before we started on camera with this interview, and you were talking a little bit about how it's come to be that non-agricultural business entities are really controlling agriculture. Could you explain that a little bit for us?
Well, I'd be happy to, Barb, and to do so, I'd like to go back 100 years ago, right here in Lincoln and Lancaster County, when there was great unrest in the agriculture and agrarian communities. What had happened is there'd been wonderful breakthroughs in technology in terms of tools for cultivating the land and bringing in harvests. And our farmers were needing capital, needing money in order to buy that, and so they began mortgaging their land, really in the 1880s, 1890s, and got into a relationship with the banks where they had to produce commodity crops in order to get cash money to pay the banks. This was a profound change. Before, by and large, families lived in relationship with the land and lived off the wealth of the land and shared the extra, the bounty. And now they became driven by the need to repay the banks. And this is when William Jennings Bryan, who was our congressman here in the 2nd Congressional District of Nebraska for 2 terms, came to the forefront and began leading a passionate call for return to agrarian roots and also for a healthier, more equitable relationship with the corporations and the banks that were basically controlling the farmers and the farm communities.
Now, some would say that our agrarian roots and how strong they are is how strong our democracy is.
Yes, that was the idea going back to the day of Thomas Jefferson. And really, if you go back in history, it was a Roman ideal articulated by Cicero, and I don't want to get too esoteric.
Really? Okay.
The agrarian ideal's been around a long time, and we've had wonderfully articulate exponents of it. And in writing The Call of the Land as a primer, an introductory book, I wanted to reintroduce the idea to people and then show them how many wonderful creative models there are that really, I think every citizen and every household in the country could in one way or another become involved with. And just to get kind of passionately philosophical for a moment, of course, one of the great trends in our world today is the development of this dynamic high-tech culture, and we all have our smartphones and our computers and 1,000 other gizmos. I always have seen that as a little enervating and draining, and as if it were to cut us off from the land. So it's my contention that the reinvigoration of an agrarian culture can rebuild the foundation that digital high-tech culture rests upon and give us, well, as William Jennings Bryan might well say, a more economically and morally vigorous community. It really stabilize things, not only in Nebraska, but for the whole of the country.